Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and be talking with you all today about building a successful MCAT study plan. So while I get my slides up, I'm gonna allow Iram to introduce herself, talk a little bit about how she helps UCLA students through Kaplan, and then also introduce our student brand ambassador who will be presenting our first few slides once I give them permission to talk. All right. Iram, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I was waiting for you to share your screen. So thanks, Haley, and Christina, thanks for having us. And we're happy to be here and presenting you how to build a successful MCAT study plan. I know a few of you are taking MCAT soon, maybe in the fall, early fall. So we're going to also talk about the summer, how to build your study plan during the summer, what you should do. So Haley will talk about that. So a little bit information, a little bit about me. My name is Iram. I'm the Student Brand Ambassador Manager. I work with Student Brand Ambassador Managers at UCLA campus. We want to make sure that we're helping students to get free resources and build their study plan and choose the course options that work best for them. So Haley will talk about that as well. Yeah, so I'm gonna also let Mai introduce herself as well. She's our student brand ambassador. So yeah, Mai, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. I don't know if you can see me because I don't see a camera feature, but I'll go ahead and just introduce myself here. My name is Mai. I'm a rising junior at UCLA. I'm studying public affairs and economics on the pre-law track. So I'm studying for the LSAT right now, and I'm actually progress. Oh, looks like I just got permissions to share my video as well. But interestingly, I am actually currently studying right now for the LSAT using Kaplan, and I've been taking the in-person course. I'm currently in DC, so I've been taking the in-person course in DC. So if any of you happen to have any personalized questions about what it's like to take a Kaplan course from a current Kaplan student, then please let me know because I am going through that right now. And I will say that Kaplan has been really helpful and the teachers here really do know what they're doing. So I can definitely speak to that. But yeah, moving forward to the benefit slide.
All right.
Okay, so for our Kaplan campus partner benefits, as UCLA students, we do get 15% off all Kaplan courses with the code UCLA 15. So you basically just use this code at the captest.com, and then you would, when you're checking out, there's a section to put in the promo code, so you just put it there. And at this time, like we already met Haley, but I want to plug her one more time because Haley is our UCLA Kaplan MCAT expert, and I booked a time with her to help me with my LSAT study plan, and she actually gave me some really good advice. So I'd really recommend talking to Haley to get really that in-person interaction with Kaplan's benefits. And then finally, our free practice questions and pop quizzes available through the link at the bottom, which is right there. And we can also put it in the chat perhaps, but go ahead and just sign up, and then you can also kind of test the waters, what you think about Kaplan's official practice test questions as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that's also linked to the QR code, or is the QR code to Haley?
Yeah, and then we'll also make these slides available to you after this presentation. So if you don't get a QR code, if you don't get a link, anything like that right now, I know it's going to be recorded, but we'll also give you like a take-home version of these slides too, which is helpful. And I'll move on to our next slide.
Yeah, but also at this time, so I'm a student brand ambassador, and right now we are inviting UCLA students to join our student brand ambassador team. Right now it's just 3 of us, so we would love to have more, specifically on the pre-med side. So that is perfect if you're pre-med and you want to join the SBA team. So some of the benefits include Firstly, an hourly wage. So you do get paid for each hour that you bill working for Kaplan. And one of the biggest perks is that you do get a free Kaplan course. So assuming that you are here, you're studying for the MCAT, you do get a SBA specific code to enroll in a free course, which is what I'm now. And it is a very flexible schedule. I will say that it's 5 to 10 hour week commitment. And it's really up to you to figure out what hours work best for you. Like last quarter, I had no classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I would mostly schedule my club talks and presentations on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it's really up to discretion and it's really flexible in that way. And lastly, there is a lot of professional development. Kaplan's SBA network is nationwide. So not only have I been able to connect with SBAs at UCLA, but also connected at the other UC campus and even met with some people in Arizona and North Carolina. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities there. And yeah, I would just in general recommend joining the SBA team. And then there's the QR code to apply, and just feel free to message EREM or me if you're interested so we can give you a referral.
All right, beautifully done. Thank you. Yeah, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. Oh, yeah. Here's our next slide. So we'll be good. Yeah, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll be monitoring it throughout. I'll try and hang around after the presentation to answer any questions. Or if you don't have time or you have any questions that come up later, I'm going to be providing my email as well, and my direct link to my calendar. So if you want to book some time with me, I'll be available to you as a resource. So we're going to go ahead and transition into the actual content of this presentation and start off with a med school admissions timeline. So just to walk you through the timeline, the dark purple is what we consider ideal in this timeline if you are not planning on taking a gap year, if you're hoping to go straight into medical school following your undergrad or your grad school. And the light purple is also what's possible in terms of admission cycles. But a key thing to take away from this is that most medical schools do use a rolling admissions process, which means they open their doors to everyone to apply on the same day. And as they receive like really qualified applicants and people who they want to invite to interviews, those seats are going to begin filling up almost on a like first come first serve basis, but based on their qualified individuals. So it is really advantageous to get your application in the earlier stages of this process, as long as you have a solid application, right? Don't rush to submit your application just because you want to be one of those first people in through the door. You do want to have a stronger application without rushing it. So it is a little bit of a balancing game in terms of that. But it is helpful to know you can start this ahead of time, right? You can start picking out who you are interested in contacting about a letter of like a reference letter for this process. You can begin drafting that personal statement. You can begin studying for the MCAT. So you can begin this process a little bit earlier than when admissions open up, and that will help you get ahead of the curve in terms of applying. So you're going to want to get your primaries in on this timeline. Again, if you are planning on attending medical school directly out of undergrad or grad school, then you are going to be applying the year before you want to start, so your junior year. If you're going to take a gap year, you basically just push it back by the number of years that you're hoping to take a gap year. But one of the really key things for gap years is that medical schools will generally accept scores 2 to 3 years prior. So you can always take the MCAT early if you want to stay in like study mode or use the resources that UCLA offers to you as a student, and kind of just get that out of the way as if you're planning on taking a gap year. I have a lot of students talk to me about whether they should or should not take a gap year. That is really up to you. If you are afraid to take a gap year because you don't want to be the only one in your class who's taking a gap year, or you're worried about what medical schools will think, we are starting to see a trend of more people taking gap years the average first year age student is trending upwards of 24, 25 now, because there's a greater amount of students who are taking gap years. There's less of a stigma towards it as well. The key with a gap year is that you want to be doing something productive during this time. So as long as it's not a vacation, even if you are traveling, you can, even if you are traveling, you can shadow a doctor, you can do an internship while traveling. There's a lot of other things that you can do during this time that will be advantageous throughout that gap year. So if you have any questions about this timeline, feel free to book some time with me. We can walk through it together. But so let's hop on over to the way that we're going to be maximizing our time today. So first, I'm going to show you what a good, appropriate study timeline looks like for this exam. Then we're going to discuss how to study within that window and best tailor it to you as an individual. And then I'm going to give you a list of resources and a way that you can kind of map this out all together in order to make sure that you have a really effective prep experience. So, hopping into step one, before you even begin studying, this is going to be a huge exam. I'm going to go over the different content areas that are going to be covered on this exam. But before you even get to opening those Kaplan books to begin studying, we need to figure out how many hours per week, how many weeks we're going to be studying, what the actual timeline of this process looks like. So, according to the AAMC, the organization that administers and scores your MCAT exams, students study on average for 20 hours a week for an average of 12 weeks in this year. That equates to around 240 total hours of studying. So whenever I throw out the hours of studying, I want you to remember that includes anytime you're taking a practice test, right? So a practice test can run towards 8 hours. So that would definitely take a big notch into those 240 hours. Reviewing practice tests, going to tutoring sessions, attending study classes, working through prep books. Any time that you are spending MCAT specific can count towards that total hour goal. So this is what the AAMC recommends. At minimum, definitely shoot for 240 hours. But at Kaplan, we actually recommend around 300 to 350 hours. So we have a variety of reasons that we recommend this higher number range. One of them is being that there's a population of students who are just not going to study for this exam and who are going to go in and take it once to see how they score and use that as their baseline. I do not recommend that approach for multiple reasons. It's an expensive exam, it's a stressful exam. The medical schools that you're applying to can see every time that you have sat for it, so you don't get to like pick and choose which score you want to submit. But basically, you want to study before you take this exam. And if you're studying for 300 hours and your score is being compared to someone who didn't study at all, you are automatically going to be in the higher percentile rank compared to them. And we also want you to be an above average student, right? So you're kind of already there, you're at UCLA, that's absolutely above average. But at Kaplan, we want you to be the best of the best, and we want you to test in the highest ability for yourself as possible. We've also seen that studying for this amount of hours gives us the best possible outcome in terms of getting your highest MCAT score possible. Unfortunately, MCAT prep is not only about the number of hours that you're studying, it's about the quality of those hours. So if I'm just studying the same thing for 300 hours, it's not going to be the most effective use of my time, which is something that's going to be a key theme throughout this presentation. We really like to use this study time calculator when kind of approaching how many hours that we're going to be studying, how many weeks we're going to be studying. So if we're going for the 300-hour range, I want to try and figure out how many hours, how many weeks I'm going to have to study personally to build out my schedule plan, my study plan to hit 300 hours. So there's two ways that we like to approach this. The first one is if you already have a testing date. So if you've already registered for your MCAT exam and you know that you're taking it in September, you can always say how many weeks that you're going to be testing in. So let's say I'm testing in 12 weeks. We're basically just going to break it down, see how many hours per week I'm going to need to study for those 12 weeks to reach that 300 hours. In this case, I'm going to be studying 25 hours per week. This is really helpful, again, if you already have that date established, to kind of see in a concrete manner how many hours minimum per week you're going to need to be able to hit to reach your ultimate goal. We can also approach it in a different way. So let's say I have not scheduled my exam yet, and I know that I want to take it next spring. I want to take it in January of next year. And I want to kind of figure out what my study schedule is going to look like before testing in January. I can incorporate how many hours per week I think I'm going to be able to have based on my class schedule, based on my work schedule, stuff like that. And then I can kind of work backwards from there and see how many weeks it's going to take me studying 14 hours per week to hit 300, in this case, 21 weeks. So 12 weeks, you have to study for 25 hours. 21 weeks, you study for 14 hours. It really just depends. There's no right answer. Everyone's schedule is going to look different, and that is something that we have a lot of resources to help you kind of figure out. So in terms of content, you're going to see a bunch of different content types on this exam. Some of them are going to be prereqs. So you might have to cover these in your undergrad or your grad course to get your degree, right? That likely includes all of your labs. So physics, chemistry, gen chem, OChem, biology, those types of categories. But you might also not have them covered in your prerequisites. So biochemistry might not be a prereq for your specific course, but you are going to see it on this exam. Something that a lot of people run into is not taking psychology or sociology in their undergrad career, and that is going to be a really big part of this exam as well. So it is really helpful to kind of just go through and see how much of this exam is going to be broken up by subjects, which we have done for you here. So this is an overall science content breakdown of this exam. Again, this is something that you'll be able to look at on your own time if you want to dive deeper into it. But we can see that the combination of psychology and sociology accounts for 30% of this overall exam. So just keeping that in mind, right? And for every section, except for the critical analysis and reasoning skills section, the CAR section, you're going to see an integration of science content. This is likely going to be different than how you get tested in your undergrad courses or your grad courses at UCLA. So for example, when you learn about the circulatory system in biology, it's just a biological system, right? It's just the way that the blood gets around in your body. However, on the MCAT exam, in the chemistry physics section, they might ask you about the physics of the circulatory system. So the circulatory system, if you break it down, is basically just a system of pipes. You have a pump, you have changes in pressure, you have a fluid system, you have a pump attached to different tubes. So all of a sudden, we take the circulatory system, we build upon it, and it's something that's greater than just a biological system. Now we have chemistry and physics working in it as well. That is how a lot of the MCAT is going to test you on the different sciences and all the different content sections. So again, just helpful. This is again something that you're gonna start to see more of when you do those practice questions, when you take those practice exams, but it is really helpful to start thinking about it now while you're in your classes, because you can start making those connections. So like redox is a really good example. Redox shows up in chemistry and physics and organic chemistry and biology and biochemistry. So you can really start to connect those different content areas and think about how it might be tested on this exam. All right, we are already on to step 2. So that was a really good overview of what this exam is going to include. but now we're going to get more specific in terms of a study schedule, in terms of how to apply those 12 or 25 weeks that you're going to be studying for this exam, as well as how to create really effective study schedules, because that is going to be like the number one takeaway is you need to be effective with your time. So the MCAT covers a ton of different content areas. When you start mapping out your study plan, the content should be organized in an intentional manner to make sure that you are progressively building mastery in each content area. Automatically, we do this for you in our course calendar. I'll show you what that's going to look like a little bit later in this presentation. I'll also provide a link if you want to do a demo version of our class for free. You'll be able to play around with that calendar. But basically, we organize material by highest yield content, which is the content we analyze a ton of different released MCAT exams. We pull out topics that get tested the most often, or are topics that award the greatest number of points. And we prioritize that content because it's going to be the best way to effectively maximize your studying. So we pull out all that content, we put it in an instructional order based on the area, and it's going to start to make a little bit more sense when you progress through those topics. So when you have the 7 different science content areas, the CARS section, 8 different textbooks that apply to this, it can be a little bit overwhelming to know where to even start, where to begin. And prioritizing your instruction is the key to getting the most out of this study time. We do this for you, and we start to build upon your progress in our courses. It's really helpful to kind of have instruction so you are also mixing content areas together. If you do have the Kaplan textbooks, maybe your friend gave them to you, your sibling gave them to you, and you plan on using them, the way I would recommend using those is instead of reading, like picking up the chemistry textbook and reading all the way through chapter 1 to 20 or however many chapters there are, and doing all of that in one sitting, you want to read chapters maybe 1 through 2, do some practice questions, put that to the side, pick up your physics textbook, do chapters 1 to 2, do the same thing with biology, do the same thing with psychology, because that's really important for reducing burnout. If you read all of the chemistry textbook, likely on day 4 of studying this, you are never going to want to look at chemistry ever again. It's also really important for spaced repetition and learning styles. You're going to be able to retain more overall if you chunk it up a little bit at a time. Same thing with like chunking, that's the way that you're studying. You should really be mixing content from different sections so you can start to relate them to one another again and begin building connections. We do this automatically for you, but if you are planning on studying by yourself, definitely try to integrate those together in the schedule. Okay, so another concept that all MCAT studiers should be putting into their calendar is the idea of spaced repetition. Spaced repetition has been shown in studies. It's one of the most widely studied topics in learning, and it's shown to ultimately lead to better retention overall, better content retention. This is essentially where you come back to content over and over while you're studying, but again, mixing it in with other topics. So this is kind of a little bit like using flashcards, right? So a flashcard, if you mix up the deck, it's going to be the same thing. We just want to be a lot more intentional with our MCAT material because the MCAT is not going to ask you definitions. It's going to ask you more applied questions. So you want to understand how concepts are going to work, situations that are going to be related to other concepts. It's really key to understand how to apply your content knowledge and have a full understanding of it. This is basically what a little bit of our class or course will look like. We make really specific assignment recommendations. So our calendar has an algorithm in it that is going to be monitoring how you do throughout the course. Everything is going to begin with content refreshers. So whether you took general chemistry like AP chemistry and you tested out of it in high school, or it's something that you're taking your sophomore year, you are still going to get the same number of content refreshers. It just will begin with a practice quiz, and you'll be able to test out of that topic if you really know it, or we'll flag it as something that you need to spend a little bit more time with. So once you go through all the content refreshers, then we move on to application assignments. This is where you will take what you've learned / know, and you've proven that to us in your content refresher assignments, and we pair it with MCAT specific test taking skills, like being able to identify a wrong answer choice in this multiple question exam, and then apply it all together in a way that prepares you for that final prep cycle. I'll show you what like some program design looks like, but it's going to include building towards taking practice tests, reviewing practice tests, and having really targeted specific topics. Okay, program design. So what does our course actually really look like? We really, again, prioritize the information that is going to prepare you best for exam day. So we use that high yield information. We pull that first and we approach you as an individual and see what high yield information you already know on your own versus what we really need to prioritize for you. So that high yield content is going to be really important. Knowing which topics and which areas you are already successful in versus which areas you need to be studying is going to be really important. And then same thing with the content refreshers, you're always going to have time to test out of those, so we're not wasting your time. This is a little bit of an example of what your calendar will look like. I did pull some actual screenshots from a course that we're going to see in a little bit. But basically, you're going to have a very personalized calendar. So the very first thing that we do is we start you off with a practice exam. It can be scary to take a practice exam, but it's really important for really giving yourself a baseline on how you're going to be able to improve. And then you'll be able to go in and change the settings to make it very personal for you. And you really get to prioritize your learning through Kaplan's calendar. Perfect. So moving on to these study tests or these exams, every journey is going to have a beginning and an end. So this is a little bit of a timeline of what taking a course with Kaplan looks like in terms of practice tests. So again, number one is going to be your baseline. We actually use an AAMC full length as your original baseline because we want to get as close to the real thing as possible. We use this as your diagnostic. You, in your Kaplan course, receive all available AAMC full-length exams, and we really just use those to gauge your like accuracy towards the MCAT, to use it as a starting point, as well as like a litmus test along the way. So a lot of students kind of hit this point, taking a full length of diagnostic full length, and it's a little bit of a roadblock for them, because maybe you haven't taken biochemistry yet. Maybe you haven't taken psychology in a big number of years. This can be a little bit intimidating, and it's really hard to sit through 8 hours and see a score that isn't in alignment with what your dream score is, right? But taking a full-length practice test is one of the best ways to be fully informed of what this exam is going to look like, what it's going to require from you, the stamina that is going to be required to do well on this exam, because it is a 7.5 hour long exam. A lot of students haven't sat through that long of an exam before, and they haven't had to apply themselves across 7 different science areas and a critical analysis and reasoning skills area. So it's just really strenuous, and I think, and we recommend, taking a practice test is the best way to have really informed studying, because you'll know how the studying is going to apply on test day. Everyone is going to be working towards the same goal. You want to get the best possible MCAT score possible, but your goal is going to look much different than my goal. This is why taking a practice test along the way is going to be really important. So, for example, you'll take the first diagnostic test. We'll cover those content refresher assignments that I talked about earlier. and then you'll take a Kaplan full-length practice test. We'll see how you're doing, how you're measuring. You will likely do a little bit better on that full-length practice test than you did on your diagnostic, just because we did refresh a lot of that information. And then you'll work on application assignments. So pairing the information that you already know with test appropriate strategies. And we kind of just continue down that path for a while, intermittently taking practice tests to, again, gauge how we're doing, the areas that we can spend less time on, the areas that we need to spend more attention on. And then we finally get to the end, we enter our prep cycle, which is really taking a full-length practice test and then spending time with the results, polishing and really targeting our review of 1 to 2 different really specific topics that we can get better on to increase our score during the next full-length exam. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I can offer you throughout this journey is skipping what you already know, because again, we want to be efficient with our time. And if I know biochemistry back and forth, it's not going to be advantageous to me to study biochemistry, because if I really need help with cars or I really need to get better at psychology, studying biochemistry is going to be wasted hours and wasted time when I could be getting more points on this exam studying the areas that I struggle with. We make this a little bit harder to do when you take a Kaplan course, again, because we're going to give you a placement quiz on over 120 different topics. If you test out of it, we automatically schedule less of that on your calendar. You'll still be able to go in and review it, but we really, really, really want to prioritize the content that is going to get you the best possible score on exam day. Okay, so prep cycle. I want to dive in a little bit more into what that will actually look like. So your prep cycle begins a little bit closer to your actual exam date. For most students, it's going to be at least 1 month prior to your test date is when you should be moving into really cyclical prepping. This is going to be your opportunity each week to really hone in on the areas of opportunity that you can get the most practice with and increase your score with the most. So the way that will work, again, is taking a practice test. In our Kaplan course, we offer 17 different full-length practice tests. We offer the 4 that the AAMC has released, and then we offer 13 of our own, which are really, really great. We use released MCAT exams to build out our own practice exams, and they are really solid. Most people actually do tend to think that they are a little bit harder than the AAMC practice exams, which some people like, some people don't like as much, but you can assure that you are getting like MCAT level questions and practice exams. So you'll take a Kaplan or AAMC practice test to determine what the areas that we need to work on the most are. And then we review those results using a hi-fi sheet, which I'll show you in an upcoming slide. But basically you're gonna plan out how to approach the areas that we need to work on the most. And then we use those results to do really targeted areas of opportunity. So whether that is taking, going to a workshop, workshops are totally all-encompassing and are part of your course with Kaplan, whether it is reviewing flashcards, whether it's reviewing MCAT style questions, that's really going to be dependent on your performance on the practice exam. And then we kind of just rinse and repeat weekly up until our actual exam date. Here is our hi-fi sheet, or how I'll fix it sheet. This is really helpful even if you're studying for your classes right now, not necessarily the MCAT, but you can go through and mark which question you got wrong, which topic you got wrong, and be really honest with yourself on why you missed it. Because if I missed a physics question, and the reason that I missed this question was because I don't understand the difference between a real image and a virtual image, that is going to be flagged as a major concept miss, because it is likely I'm going to see a few questions on this exam that deal with a real or a virtual image. And if I am not able to tell a difference between the two, I'm likely to miss all of those questions, right? So I know that I need to go back and spend a good amount of time reviewing what a real image is, reviewing what a virtual image is, being able to tell a difference between those two. And I can do that by reviewing the chapter that deals with that topic, going to a different workshop, using video resources, getting tutoring. That's something that I want to throw more resources at. Versus if I got question 48 wrong and it was a blood-based biology question, and I got it wrong because I forgot that red blood cells don't have organelles. Compared to my physics error, this is going to be a much more minor detail. It is not nearly as likely that the majority of biology questions I see on my exam are going to deal with whether or not a red blood cell contains organelles, right? So I don't need to throw as much time at understanding this topic. Maybe I review it weekly. Maybe I take a short quiz or review my flashcards. Just really helpful to identify what your big areas of miss are and how you can approach changing this approach. So again, we have really realistic practice. We base all of our practice exams and our full lengths in real MCATs. And we have a huge team of MCAT experts who write these full lengths and work on this prep as well. One thing I did want to do for y'all in this presentation was just show you an example of what a study plan could look like. So your first step is going to be going in and building out the parameters of your personal study plan. So if you know that you are testing in September, that's a really, really big test date this year, is that September 2nd. And you know that you're testing on that date, and you're someone who is taking a quarter off or isn't working this quarter to be able to study the max number of hours possible, you can go in and set that. If you are not available on Saturdays, you can go in and block that out. We have a really dynamic calendar that lets you build out a day-by-day schedule. If you are going on vacation for a week and you know that you can't study for a week, you'll be able to override that. Really important for you. We are going to walk through what a calendar looks like. So in the beginning, you'll see those different content refreshers that we were talking about. So as you first get into your practice, you're going to see content refreshers that deal with all different science topics. Going to be really important. Again, you're going to get a placement quiz in this. And if you test out of genetics, we're not going to spend as much time on it. And then as you get closer to the middle portion of your class or your course, you're going to see a lot less content refreshers. You're going to be doing a lot more applied assignments. And this is also something that you can build out yourself if you are planning on self-studying, is just try to mimic this calendar. So do content refreshers, move on to application assignments, begin to integrate different MCAT-based questions. And then towards the end of your process, again, you're going to see that prep cycle. So taking a full-length practice test, reviewing that full-length practice test, and then building out really targeted specific blocks of review in order to get better at those different high-yield content. We do offer a, again, practice version of this. It comes with a full-length practice test. It comes with a limited version of our question bank, and it also comes with a month-long window to access your own personal calendar like this. So if you are interested in doing that 30-day demo with these materials, I am going to drop a link in the chat right now. You basically just go to our website and sign up for it. You'll have 30 days from the time that you enroll to access your calendar, that full-length practice test, and that limited version of our question bank, which is really helpful to kind of just understanding what a calendar can look like for you personally. So at Kaplan, we have a really, really great ability to say that if you take a course with us and you apply yourself, you follow this calendar, you do everything as prescribed, Kaplan students raise their MCAT score from baseline an average of 15 points. This is really personalized content. You're not going to be wasting your time. It's going to be very applied to you specifically. So you can go through and make sure that you're having the best use of your own personal time. If you have heard of our books, again, really popular. I only say that because a good majority of the students who come talk to me ask me about how to use the Kaplan books that their friend or their coworker or their colleague has given to them. Our course instructors write our textbooks, and they also teach all of our courses that go into developing our products. So if you are interested in tutoring, or you're interested in a boot camp, or admissions counseling, the people who are behind the integration of all of our content, they are the ones leading the charge in this way. And all of our MCAT instructors have scored at least in the 90th percentile, so 90 at 90% or better than the rest of their peers on their given MCAT exam, so you know that they know what they're talking about. Really, really helpful information. Just really want to highlight our teachers because they are amazing. If you are interested in attending any like free events, that will definitely be something that is available to you. If you do sign up with that QR code, we'll send you different free events. We have some events coming up that include a trial class. So if you are curious to see what an MCAT course looks like with Kaplan, you can come and sit in on an actual course with us, and you can ask questions of our instructor. You can get to know that instructor. We have different workshops that are coming up. So preparing for the January MCAT, if you're someone who is taking it then. We're doing a metabolism workshop that's coming up. We have workshops about when you should take the MCAT, how to score over a 520, a lot of really great different workshops. And again, those will be emailed to you if you sign up through that QR code that we had in the very beginning of this slide. So I know I just rushed through a lot of that. If you do have any questions, if you want to talk about courses, if you want help with that calendar, if you want to access that 15% off, and you want to talk about which course might be best for you, I am here as a resource to you. So my email, I will drop it in the chat right now. My email is haley.miller@kaplan.edu. So if you want to shoot me an email, it will be at that email I just dropped in the chat. But if you want to book time with me directly and talk to me via Google Meet, you can scan this QR code or just go to my You Can Book Me link and then find a time that works for you. If for some reason a time doesn't work for you, feel free to shoot me an email. We'll put something on the books. But you can meet with me for free, and we can talk about any questions that you might have on this exam, towards studying for this exam, or anything about your journey towards med school that you might have questions on. So I really appreciate your time today. I'm going to be on campus at UCLA in the fall, so hopefully I'll be able to run into some people there. But if you do have any questions, I encourage you to drop them in the Q&A right now, and I'll be able to answer those for you. And if not, it was really great talking to you all this afternoon, and thank you for attending.
Thank you, Haley and Aram, for doing this presentation. I'm gonna stop recording.